The crystal towers of Zentara Prime reached high into the purple sky, their surfaces catching the light of 3 distant suns. Deep inside the largest tower, the Galactic Federation Council sat in their floating chairs, discussing matters that affected billions of worlds across the galaxy. Ambassador Kythek stood before the council, his blue skin shimmering under the artificial lights. He was a Valdorian, one of the most powerful races in the galaxy. His people had conquered dozens of star systems with their advanced weapons and energy shields. Today, he brought news that made the other council members lean forward with interest. "We have discovered a new species," Kythex announced, his voice echoing in the vast chamber. "They call themselves humans, and they come from a small yellow star they name Sol. Our scouts have been watching them for several months." A holographic display appeared in the center of the room, showing images of human ships floating in the white darkness of space. The council members looked at the pictures and began to laugh. The human vessels looked like metal boxes with engines stuck on the back. Patches covered holes in their hulls. Wires and pipes ran along the outside where they should have been hidden inside. "These are their warships?" asked Councillor Vex, a tall creature with 4 arms. "They look like cargo haulers from the old days." Kythex nodded, sharing their amusement. "Indeed, our analysis shows they use primitive fusion reactors for power. Their weapons are simple projectile launchers and nuclear missiles. They have no energy shields, no plasma cannons, no quantum disruptors. Their fastest ships barely reach half light speed." The display showed more images. Human crews worked on their ships with simple tools, welding metal plates and fixing engines by hand. Everything looked old and worn out. The council members shook their heads in disbelief. How did they even reach the stars with such crude technology? Wondered Councillor Thrix, whose species had mastered faster-than-light travel over 10,000 years ago. "They are stubborn," Kythex replied. "Our scouts report that humans refuse to give up even when their equipment fails. They fix things with whatever materials they can find. They take terrible risks that no civilized species would attempt." The council grew quiet as they thought about this. In their advanced civilization, everything was automated, computers controlled, their ships. Artificial intelligence fought their battles. When something broke, they simply replaced it with a new one. The idea of fixing broken equipment with spare parts seemed strange and primitive. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Earthship Defiant, looking out at the stars through a cracked window. The glass had been damaged in a meteor shower 3 months ago, but they could not afford to replace it. Instead, his crew had sealed the cracks with clear polymer and kept flying. The Defiant was over 200 years old. She had started life as a mining ship, digging precious metals from asteroids in the outer solar system. When Earth needed warships to defend against pirates and raiders, they had taken ships like the Defiant and bolted weapons onto them. The result was not pretty, but it worked. Jake walked over to his tactical station where Ryan Bell was checking their weapon systems. Ryan was young, only 25, but he knew every bolt and wire in their aging equipment. Their main guns were electromagnetic railguns that fired chunks of metal at incredible speed. Simple, reliable, and deadly. "How are we looking, Ryan?" Jake asked. "The port railgun is acting up again," Ryan replied, not looking up from his console. "Lisa thinks she can fix it, but we need better parts." Jake nodded. Lisa Park was their chief engineer, and she worked miracles with their ancient machinery. She could fix almost anything with spare parts, welding equipment, and pure determination. Her engine room looked like a museum of old technology, but somehow she kept it all running. "Captain," called Communications Officer Pete Davis from across the bridge. "We're getting a message from Earth Defense Command. Admiral Sullivan wants to speak with all ship captains immediately." Jake frowned. Emergency communications were rare and usually meant trouble. He activated the communication system and Admiral Kate Sullivan's face appeared on the main screen. She looked tired and worried. "Captains," the Admiral began without greeting. "We have received contact from an alien species. They call themselves Valdorians, and they claim to represent something called the Galactic Federation." A murmur ran through the bridge crew. First contact with aliens was something humanity had dreamed about for centuries. but the Admiral's expression suggested this was not a friendly meeting. "The aliens have given us an ultimatum," Admiral Sullivan continued. "They demand that Earth surrender immediately and accept their rule. They claim that resistance is useless because our technology is too primitive to challenge them." Jake felt his jaw clench. Nobody told Earth what to do, especially not aliens who had never met humans before. "They have given us 72 hours to respond," the Admiral said. "All ships are to report to defensive positions around Earth and Luna immediately. We may be outgunned, but we will not surrender without a fight." The communication ended, leaving the bridge in silence. Jake looked around at his crew. They were scared, but he could see determination in their eyes. These were people who had spent their lives working with broken equipment and impossible odds. They knew how to fight when everything was against them. "Pete, set course for Earth," Jake ordered. "Best speed." "Yes, sir," Pete replied, his fingers dancing over the navigation controls. Lisa Park's voice crackled over the intercom from the engine room. "Captain, I heard the Admiral's message. I can give you full power, but the old reactor is going to complain about it." "Do what you can, Lisa," Jake replied. "We need every bit of speed you can squeeze out of her." Back on Zentara Prime, Ambassador Kythex was explaining his plan to the Galactic Council. The holographic display now showed the Sol system, with Earth, highlighted in blue. "A small patrol fleet will be sufficient," Kythex said confidently. 3 heavy cruisers and a dozen escort ships should be more than enough to handle their entire military. Their primitive weapons cannot penetrate our energy shields, and their slow ships cannot escape our faster vessels. The council members nodded in agreement. It seemed like a reasonable plan. Advanced civilizations had been conquering primitive worlds for thousands of years. This would be no different. "How long will it take?" asked Councillor Vex. "The humans will surrender as soon as they see our ships," Kythex replied. "No species has ever been foolish enough to fight against such overwhelming technological superiority. We should have their submission within days of our arrival." What none of the council members knew was that they had made a critical error. They had studied human technology and found it lacking. They had observed human ships and seen them as primitive, but they had not studied human nature. They did not understand that humans had spent their entire history fighting against impossible odds and refusing to give up. The Valdorian fleet began preparations for what they expected to be a simple and quick conquest. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, other species watched with interest. Some hoped the humans would provide entertainment before their inevitable defeat. Others wondered if these primitive newcomers might have some surprises. In the Sol system, humanity prepared for war with the only weapons they had: outdated ships, primitive technology, and an unbreakable will to fight for their freedom. Commander Zephyx stood on the bridge of the Stellar Dominion, watching the blue and green planet grow larger on his view screen. Earth looked peaceful from space, with white clouds swirling over the continents. It was hard to believe that such a beautiful world was home to such primitive beings. "Commander," his tactical officer reported, "we are detecting human ships throughout the system. They appear to be arranged in defensive formations around the major planets." Zephyx smiled, showing his sharp white teeth. The humans were trying to defend their system with their pathetic collection of ancient vessels. It would be like watching children play with toy swords against trained warriors. "Display their fleet positions," he ordered. The main screen changed to show the entire Sol system. Red dots marked the positions of human ships. They were spread out from Mercury to the outer gas giants, with the largest concentration around Earth itself. Zephyx counted nearly 200 vessels, but he was not impressed. Quantity meant nothing when facing superior technology. "Sir," the communications officer announced, "the humans are sending us a message. Put it through," Zephyx said, curious to hear what these primitives had to say. Admiral Kate Sullivan appeared on the screen, her gray hair pulled back and her face stern. Behind her, Zephyx could see the bridge of what looked like an ancient command ship with exposed cables and flickering displays. "This is Admiral Sullivan of the Earth Defense Fleet," she said in a clear, strong voice. "You have entered our solar system without permission and threatened our world. I am giving you one chance to leave peacefully." The Valdorian officers on the bridge began to laugh. This human woman was actually threatening them with her collection of scrap metal ships. "Admiral Sullivan," Zephix replied, still smiling. "I am Commander Zephix of the Valdorian Empire. Your resistance is pointless. Surrender now and your people will be treated fairly under Galactic Federation rule." "Never," Sullivan replied without hesitation. "Humanity has never bowed to tyrants, and we will not start now." The communication ended, leaving the bridge quiet except for the soft humming of advanced machinery. Zephix shook his head in amazement. These humans were either very brave or very stupid. "All ships," he announced over the fleet communication system. "Begin the attack. Show these primitives the power of civilized warfare." Near Jupiter, Captain Jake Morrison watched the alien fleet approach through his patched window. The Valdorian ships were beautiful in a deadly way, with smooth curves and gleaming metal surfaces. Energy fields shimmered around them like protective bubbles. They moved through space like graceful sea creatures, fast and silent. "They are targeting us," Ryan Bell reported from his tactical station. "Energy readings are off the charts." "All ships prepare for combat," Jake announced over the communication system. "Remember what Lisa taught us about their weapons. Stay close to the gas giant's magnetic field." Chief Engineer Lisa Park had spent days studying the alien technology from the data their scouts had gathered. She discovered that the advanced alien weapons worked best in clean space, away from interference. But Jupiter's massive magnetic field created chaos that might disrupt their targeting systems. The first Valdorian plasma blasts lit up the darkness like miniature suns. They struck the human ships with incredible force, enough energy to vaporize any normal vessel. But the human ships did not vaporize. Sparks flew from their hulls and chunks of metal broke away, but they kept flying. "Impossible," whispered the Valdorian tactical officer aboard the Stellar Dominion. "Those ships should be destroyed." What the aliens did not understand was that human ships were built differently. Lisa Park and engineers like her had learned to expect damage. Every critical system had backups. Every important component was protected by multiple layers of armor. When one part broke, another part took over. "Damage report," Jake called out as his ship shook from another plasma hit. "Hull breach on Deck 3, reported his damage control officer. "But the bulkheads are holding. We have lost 2 sensor arrays, but the main systems are still online." Jake nodded. The Defiant was hurt, but she was still fighting. Around him, other human ships were taking damage but refusing to die. It was like watching old buildings survive an earthquake while newer structures fell down. Lieutenant Sam Carter piloted his fighter craft through the chaos around Jupiter's largest moon. His ship was tiny compared to the massive Valdorian cruisers, but that made him harder to hit. He had grown up flying cargo shuttles through asteroid fields, learning to navigate by instinct when instruments failed. A Valdorian scout ship appeared in front of him, its weapons charging for a killing shot. Sam did something that no civilized pilot would attempt. He flew directly into Jupiter's radiation belt, where the magnetic field was strongest. The alien ship followed him, confident in its superior shielding. But as they entered the intense magnetic field, something strange happened. The scout ship's advanced computers began to malfunction. Warning lights flashed on its bridge as systems failed one by one. Sam's fighter, with its simple mechanical controls and basic electronics, flew through the radiation like it was clear space. He turned and fired his primitive missiles at the disabled alien ship. The scout vessel, helpless without its computer systems, took the full impact and exploded in a ball of fire. "Did you see that?" Sam called out over the communication channel. "Their fancy computers cannot handle the magnetic field. We can use this against them." Word spread quickly through the human fleet. Ships began moving closer to the gas giants, using the natural interference to level the playing field. The Valdorians found their advanced targeting systems confused by the chaotic environment that humans navigated every day. Dr. Amy Foster worked frantically in her laboratory on Luna, analyzing the alien technology from the wreckage of their first engagement. What she discovered surprised her. The Valdorian computers were incredibly advanced, but they had a weakness that human systems did not share. "Admiral," she reported to Sullivan over a secure channel, Their computer systems are designed to work perfectly in controlled conditions, but when faced with unexpected interference, they shut down to protect themselves. Our computers are more primitive, but they keep working even when damaged. This was the difference between a civilization that had perfected technology and one that had learned to survive with imperfect tools. Human computers were built to function when half their circuits were fried. Human ships were designed to fly when their hulls were full of holes. Human crews trained to fight when everything was going wrong. As the battle continued, more Valdorian ships arrived to join the fight. They could not understand why the human ships refused to die. Plasma beams that should have cut through metal, like paper, barely scratched the layered armor that human engineers had welded together from salvaged materials. Commander Zefix grew frustrated as he watched his perfect battle plan fall apart. His ships were faster and more powerful, but the humans fought like cornered animals. When their weapons were damaged, they used backup systems. When their backup systems failed, they repaired them while under fire. "Sir," his science officer reported, "the human ships are using some kind of adaptive technology. Every time we destroy one of their systems, they route power through a different pathway." Zefix stared at the tactical display, watching red dots that represented human ships continue to move and fight long after they should have been destroyed. These primitives were not fighting with advanced technology. They were fighting with something his people had forgotten over thousands of years of easy victories. They were fighting with determination. The battle raged on, and for the first time in his military career, Commander Zefix began to wonder if his superior technology would be enough to defeat an enemy that simply refused to give up. News of the human resistance spread across the galaxy faster than anyone expected. On dozens of worlds, alien species gathered around their communication devices to watch the impossible battle taking place in the Sol system. What had started as a simple conquest was becoming something no one had seen before. More ships arrived each day, but they were not coming to help the Valdorians. They came to watch. Fleets from the Crystalline Empire, the Hive Collective, and other galactic powers positioned themselves at the edge of the system. They wanted to see how long these strange humans would last against superior technology. Commander Zefix stood in his command center, staring at reports that made no sense. His fleet had been fighting for 6 days, and the human ships were still operational. Many were damaged, some barely held together, but they kept fighting. Worse, more human vessels kept arriving from the outer system. "Sir," his intelligence officer reported, "we are detecting additional human fleets approaching from Mars and the asteroid belt. It appears they have converted civilian ships into warships." On the main display, Zefix could see the new arrivals. Cargo haulers with missile pods welded to their sides, passenger liners with armor plates bolted over their windows, mining ships carrying loads of metal chunks to use as ammunition. It was the most primitive fleet he had ever seen, and somehow it was winning. Captain Jake Morrison felt every vibration as the Defiant shook under another plasma bombardment. His ship had taken so much damage that she barely looked like the same vessel that had left Earth orbit a week ago. Holes covered her hull, patched with whatever materials Lisa Park could find. Cables and pipes ran along the outside where the inner ones had been destroyed. "Lisa," Jake called over the intercom. "How? Are we holding up?" "The main reactor is running at 40%, Lisa's voice crackled back through the static. "I have got 3 backup power units jury-rigged to the weapon systems. We can keep shooting, but I cannot promise for how long." Jake smiled despite the situation. Lisa had worked miracles keeping them operational. She had rebuilt their engines, twice rerouted power through backup systems, and even used spare parts from the galley to fix their navigation computer. Ryan Bell looked up from his tactical station, sweat running down his face. "Captain, I have got a target. That big Valdorian cruiser is moving into range of our railguns." "Are the guns operational?" Jake asked. "Lisa managed to fix the port gun this morning," Ryan replied. "Both guns are loaded with armor-piercing rounds." Jake studied the tactical display. The Valdorian cruiser was twice the size of the Defiant, with energy shields that could deflect plasma beams and particle weapons. But their shields were designed to stop energy, not solid objects moving at incredible speed. "All ships," Jake announced over the fleet communication channel, "concentrate fire on the big cruiser. Use kinetic rounds, not energy weapons. Across the battlefield, human ships turned their primitive railguns toward the massive Valdorian vessel. The aliens had spent thousands of years perfecting defenses against advanced weapons. They had never considered that someone might still use simple projectiles. The first salvo hit the cruiser's shields and passed right through them. Chunks of metal traveling at a significant fraction of light speed slammed into the ship's hull. The Valdorians had not built their ships to withstand physical impacts. Their hulls, designed to deflect energy beams, crumpled under the solid hits. "Impossible," gasped the Valdorian captain as his ship shuddered under the bombardment. "Their primitive weapons are penetrating our shields." Emergency alarms rang throughout the alien vessel as atmosphere leaked from dozens of holes. The crew, trained to fight clean battles with energy weapons, had no experience with this kind of damage. Their automated repair systems were designed to fix energy damage, not physical holes in the hull. Meanwhile, human damage control teams were working miracles throughout their fleet. When the cargo hauler New York took a direct plasma hit that destroyed half her bridge, the crew simply moved command operations to the cargo bay and kept fighting. When the converted passenger liner Boston lost her main engines, they rigged backup thrusters from the escape pods and continued the battle. Lieutenant Sam Carter had become something of a legend among the fighter pilots. His small craft had survived encounters that should have destroyed him a dozen times over. He flew through debris fields that would challenge the best pilots, using the wreckage as cover from alien weapons. "Control," Sam reported over his radio. "I have got eyes on their command ship, the big one with all the fancy lights." "Roger, Sam," came the reply from Admiral Sullivan. "Can you get close enough for a missile run?" Sam looked at his instrument panel. Half his systems were offline, and his ship held together with emergency patches and spare wire. But his missiles were still functional, and he had learned something important about Valdorian technology. "Affirmative, Control. Their point defense systems cannot track targets moving through high radiation zones. I'm going to use Saturn's rings for cover." What Sam attempted next would have been considered suicide by any military academy in the galaxy. He flew his damaged fighter through Saturn's ring system, using chunks of ice and rock as shields while alien defense guns tried to target him. The Valdorian computers, designed for clean space combat, could not track a target moving through such chaotic conditions. Dr. Amy Foster had made another crucial discovery while analyzing captured alien technology. She contacted Admiral Sullivan with urgent news. "Admiral," she reported from her laboratory on Luna, "I have found a critical weakness in their ship design. All their systems are controlled by central computers. If we can disable the main computer, the entire ship becomes helpless." "How do we do that?" Sullivan asked. "Electromagnetic pulse," Amy replied. "Our nuclear weapons create massive electromagnetic pulses when they detonate. Their advanced computers cannot handle that kind of interference, but our simpler systems can survive it." This information spread quickly through the human fleet. Nuclear missiles, considered primitive weapons by galactic standards, suddenly became their most valuable assets. Human ships began targeting Valdorian vessels with electromagnetic pulse warheads, shutting down their advanced systems and leaving them defenseless. The tide of battle began to turn as more human reinforcements arrived. These were not military ships, but converted civilian vessels crewed by miners, cargo pilots, and engineers who had spent their lives working with unreliable equipment. They brought skills that military training could not teach: the ability to make broken things work, and to keep fighting when everything went wrong. Commander Zefix watched in horror as his perfect fleet fell apart. Ships that had conquered star systems were being defeated by vessels that looked like they belonged in a scrapyard. His crew, trained in the clean warfare of civilized space, had no answer for an enemy that fought with such desperate creativity. "Sir," his tactical officer reported with disbelief in his voice, "the humans have modified their mining equipment to use as weapons. They are firing asteroids at us using magnetic accelerators." Zefix stared at the display showing human mining ships, launching chunks of rock at his fleet. It was the most primitive attack he had ever seen, and somehow it was working. His ships, designed to fight other energy weapon vessels, had no defense against simple rocks moving at high speed. The battle reached its climax when Danny Brooks, piloting a fighter held together with welding patches and determination, made a decision that changed everything. His ship was dying, life support failing, weapons offline. But he still had engines, and he could see the bridge of the stellar dominion through his cracked cockpit window. "This is for Earth," Danny whispered and pushed his throttle to maximum. The Valdorian point defense guns tried to stop him, but his fighter was too small and moving too fast. Danny's ship struck the stellar dominion's bridge at nearly half the speed of light, punching through their energy shields and advanced armor like they were made of paper. The explosion lit up space for thousands of kilometers. When the light faded, the pride of the Valdorian fleet was drifting dead in space, her command center completely destroyed. For the first time in galactic history, a primitive species had defeated advanced technology through sheer determination and refusal to surrender. The destruction of the stellar dominion sent shockwaves through the Valdorian fleet that had nothing to do with the explosion. For thousands of years, no primitive species had ever destroyed one of their flagship vessels. The sight of their most advanced warship broken and drifting in space shattered something fundamental in the alien crews. Commander Zephix floated in an escape pod, watching his dead ship grow smaller through the small window. Around him, other Valdorian vessels were pulling back from the human fleet, their crews too stunned to continue fighting. Many of the alien officers had never seen one of their ships destroyed before. The idea that it could happen was beyond their understanding. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the battered Defiant, hardly believing what he was seeing. The alien fleet that had seemed so powerful was retreating. Their beautiful ships, with their perfect curves and gleaming surfaces, were limping away from the battlefield like wounded animals. "Captain," Ryan Bell called out from his tactical station, "the aliens are requesting communication." "Put them through," Jake replied, curious to hear what the invaders had to say now. A Valdorian officer appeared on the main screen. His blue skin had turned pale, and his usual confidence was gone. "Human vessels," he said in a shaking voice. "We request safe passage to leave your system." Jake looked around his bridge at his crew. Lisa Park had come up from the engine room, her coveralls stained with oil and her face smudged with soot. Ryan Bell sat at his station, surrounded by sparking electronics and jury-rigged repairs. These people had fought impossible odds and won. "You came here to conquer us," Jake said to the alien officer. "You threatened our world and our people. Now you want safe passage?" "Yes," the Valdorian replied. "We were wrong about your capabilities. We did not understand what we were facing." Jake thought about Danny Brooks, who had given his life to destroy their flagship. He thought about all the human crews who had fought with broken ships and outdated weapons. "You can leave," he finally said, "but spread the word throughout your galaxy. Earth is not for conquest." The communication ended, and Jake watched the alien fleet withdraw toward the edge of the solar system. Behind them, they left wreckage and debris, but also something more important. They left behind the knowledge that humans could not be easily defeated. News of the human victory spread across the galaxy at the speed of light. On the crystal world of Zentara Prime, the Galactic Federation Council met in emergency session. The chamber that had been filled with laughter just weeks before was now silent and tense. Ambassador Keethex, who had been so confident about conquering the primitive humans, now stood before his peers with his head lowered in shame. The holographic displays around him showed images of destroyed Valdorian ships and victorious human vessels. "How is this possible?" demanded Counselor Vex, his arms waving in agitation. "They have no advanced technology, no energy weapons, no quantum shields." "That may be precisely why they won," said Counselor Thrix quietly. "We have become dependent on our technology. When it fails, we fail. But these humans have learned to fight with whatever they have." The council members looked at each other, with growing unease. For millennia, they had maintained power through technological superiority. Their advanced weapons and automated systems had made conquest easy. But now they faced an enemy that fought differently, an enemy that could not be defeated by simply having better equipment. On dozens of worlds throughout the galaxy, oppressed species watched the news broadcasts with growing excitement. The mighty Valdorian Empire, which had conquered their planets with ease, had been defeated by a species using primitive technology. If humans could resist, perhaps they could too. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood in the command center on Luna, reading reports from across the solar system. The alien fleets that had come to watch the battle were now leaving, but not before sending messages. Some offered trade agreements, others requested defensive alliances. A few even asked for technical assistance, wanting to learn human engineering methods. Admiral, her communications officer reported, "We are receiving surrender requests from Valdorian colonies in 3 nearby star systems. They want to negotiate before we arrive." Sullivan raised an eyebrow. "We are not planning to attack their colonies." "They do not know that, ma'am. Word has spread that humans are unstoppable in battle. Several species are asking for protection from Valdorian rule." This was something Sullivan had not expected. Humanity had fought to defend their home, not to build an empire. But their victory had shown the galaxy that the established powers could be challenged. Captain Jake Morrison worked alongside Lisa Park in the Defiant's engine room, helping to repair the damage from their week-long battle. The ship was a mess of patched hull plates, rewired systems, and jury-rigged equipment. But she was alive, and so were her crew. "Lisa," Jake said as he handed her a welding torch, "do you think we really won?" Lisa looked up from the power coupling she was repairing. "We are still here and they are gone. That sounds like winning to me." "But what happens next?" Jake asked. "The whole galaxy knows about us now." Lisa smiled and returned to her work. "Then they know not to mess with humans," she said simply. Across Earth's orbital shipyards, construction crews were working around the clock, but they were not building new ships with advanced alien technology. Instead, they were building more vessels like the Defiant, tough, reliable ships that could take damage and keep fighting. The galaxy had learned to fear human determination, and humanity intended to keep that reputation. Dr. Amy Foster published her analysis of the battle for the Earth Defense Command. Her report would become required reading at military academies across human space. The key lesson was simple. Advanced technology was not always better technology. Sometimes the crude solution that kept working was superior to the elegant solution that broke under pressure. Young pilots like Sam Carter became instructors, teaching new recruits how to fly damaged ships and fight with broken equipment. Their methods seemed primitive to outside observers, but they were effective. Human crews learned to expect problems and plan for equipment failure. The Galactic Federation never recovered from the shock of their defeat. The idea that primitive species could resist their rules spread like wildfire across the galaxy. Within a year, dozens of worlds declared independence. The great civilizations found themselves fighting rebels who used human tactics, improvised weapons, converted civilian ships, and an absolute refusal to surrender. Commander Zephyx spent months in debriefing sessions trying to explain to his superiors how the humans had won. The hardest part to make them understand was not the human technology, but the human spirit. The galaxy had grown soft during millennia of easy victories. They had forgotten what it meant to fight for survival. They never gave up, Zephyx told the military tribunal investigating the defeat. "We destroyed their ships, but they kept fighting. We outnumbered them, but they kept coming. We had better weapons, but they found ways to make their primitive equipment work against us." The tribunal members listened with growing concern. If humans could defeat Valdorian technology with determination and creativity, what did that say about the rest of galactic civilization? 5 years after the battle, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of a new ship. The Defiant II was built using the lessons learned from their victory. She looked rough and patched even when new, with multiple backup systems and manual overrides for everything. Other species called human ships ugly, but they also feared them. The galaxy had changed. The great powers still existed, but they no longer seemed invincible. Humans had shown that advanced technology could be defeated by simple determination and refusal to quit. It was a lesson that could not be unlearned. Lisa Park, now promoted to Chief of Engineering for the entire Earth Defense Fleet, stood beside Jake and looked out at the stars. "So," she said, "what do we do now that we have shocked the galaxy?" Jake smiled and watched human ships patrol the space lanes that were once controlled by alien empires. "We keep being human," he replied. "That seems to be enough."